Hello, my name is Greta Harrison. Welcome to Born Fabulous Podcast, Season 3, Episode 9. The theme of this season is young adults with intellectual disabilities living full lives of independence and interdependence. You will hear interviews with parents, support staff, and of course the young adults with intellectual disabilities. Please note these interviews were done 1 to 2 years ago. Achieving independence is a complex journey for many individuals and families. There were many stops and starts with various entities when putting together Season 3. Regardless, this content is very relevant and we hope you will find it helpful. This episode is the first of 5 parts with Janice Fialka and Richard Feldman. Though they both say they are retired, Janice and Richard continue to be sought-after presenters and speakers on issues relating to disability, inclusion, building community, advocacy, and more. Janice is also the author of 4 books and a poet. Richard and Janice are the parents of Micah Fialka-Feldman, one of the stars of the film Intelligent Lives. Micah has an intellectual disability. It was a real treat to have this in-depth discussion with both Janice and Rich. Now, please enjoy this short clip of Love is a Potion. The lyrics are by Melissa Riggio, a young lady who had Down syndrome and was the focus of episodes 1 through 4 in Season 1. The music and voice are by Rachel Fuller.
Love is everything. Love is all around. Love is a potion. Love is passion. Love is devotion. Love is fusion.
I am so grateful to have Janice Fialka and Rich Feldman here to talk about the wonderful journey that they've had with their remarkable son, Micah Fialka-Feldman, who we all know very well from Intelligent Lives. And I'm very proud to say he was a big part of Season 2 of Born Fabulous podcast with his best friend, Tori Cedar. So thank you for being here. Hello.
It's our honor. We're excited. Thank you for all the work that you do. You really provide such a wealth of information and spirit to all kinds of folks. So thank you, Greta.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, you both have such accomplished lives, helping so many with your books, your award-winning film, speaking engagements, workshops, teaching. You give advice to professionals. And I love your poem. I love your poem, Advice to Professionals Who Must Conference Cases. I want to say that publicly. I want to say how beautiful that is, how you're speaking as a parent to the souls of other parents and hopefully changing the souls of many educators. So, Janice, I thank you for that. And I want to say that publicly. And I'm going to post a link of that to bornfabulouspodcast.com under our many links that we'll have for Season 3. So having said all that, catch us up on what you all are up to these days.
You know, we just keep growing and stretching as a family. We've just most recently spent 3 weeks with both of our kids in Boston. We live in Detroit, but we were able to stay in Boston for 3 weeks. Our daughter, Emma, who has been a second grade teacher in Boston for a principal in Boston of an elementary school. So we get to hear a lot of her stories and her experiences. And then Micah was with us as well. So we did a lot of talking as a family. I mean, we're with every relationship, every family, there are ebbs and flows. There's good years and bad years. Sometimes we say it's not about good days and bad days. Sometimes it's all stretches of, challenges. I would say recently in the last couple of months, there's just some things that we've worked out are coming together. So Mike is visiting us now here in Detroit for a week, and then he'll go back to where he lives in Syracuse. So I don't know, that's a little bit of a family update. I continue to speak and present now mostly through Zoom in various kinds of classes and for parent groups. And Richie's very busy.
So I think the part of the visit in Boston, where our daughter lives, is that she's principal of a school that's totally committed to full inclusion. So in fact, the percentage of young kids with disabilities is like 30% in this public school. So she's totally committed to this and changing the culture, because in many ways that's what our journey has been, is about the changing of culture, let alone the community advocacy and the advocacy and the opening of doors with Micah. And I'm also very active in a lot of community work in Detroit, looking to create a community land trust that is committed to universal design housing that's off the grid in Detroit with people from the neighborhoods. And we work with different disability organizations in Detroit who are fighting insurance law changes that will hurt people, and all other kinds of committed work around this.
You all are very busy in a good way, in the best possible ways, aren't you? I'm glad you brought up Emma, because I think much of the audience may know this, but not everybody, that Emma is also a very big inclusion advocate. And one of the great things she did was, when the pandemic started, she quickly, organically got educators together to volunteer and help students who needed help online, because many school districts were just learning as they went, and a lot of kids were suffering and behind and struggling. And she said, hey, there's some rock stars out there. Let's get together and let's help. And that was amazing.
It was.
Yeah. I look forward to meeting her someday.
Yeah. There, and I think what she has learned in our family and from so many other people is the importance of connecting with others. And so she did this call out and said, who needs help and who wants to offer it? And I connected with a mother in one of the southern states, and a teacher, a speech therapist, connected with someone in Oregon. And it was the way you get how the expression goes, making a way out of no way. And one way you do that is by being bold, and you're asking for help.
Yes, you've raised two bold children. That's for sure. And the world needs bold change makers. So thank you for that. Thank you for that. And in your update, if you could tell us, now the pandemic has been going on for, we're starting 2020, now we're in 2022. Happy 2022 to you all, by the way. But I know at the beginning of that affected you a little bit. If you can just tell us at the beginning of that, how you coped with that as a family.
Well, we were actually in New Zealand, Rich and I were. We were showing Intelligent Lives, and obviously needed to come back. It was chaotic, scary, frightening. Micah was in Syracuse. The whole issue of who could support him, given the potential for serious illness. Everything was up for grabs, and no one really knew what to do. And I think Emma, in addition to other staff people, really came forth. And one of the things that we could really build on is that since third grade, Micah has had a circle of support, circle of friends, an intentional gathering of people, not the same people through the years, but the same concept. And so a call out to the circle to offer whatever kind of support they could offer. We were all new to Zoom and all that. And so Micah's circle Zoomed together. We did then, because he was in his apartment alone, we weren't able to, once we got back to Detroit, we had to quarantine for 2 weeks and then drive there. So there was a lot of alone time for him. So I reached out to a lot of my friends and said, on Zoom. And so a friend of ours who does yoga was willing to do yoga with Micah, and another person who did art, did art, and another person who played the cello came forward. So that intent, one thing I think that we've learned over and over again is the importance of reaching out to the community. People may not always say, I can help, but more times than not, people will. So I think that was, and then eventually Micah did come home for 3 months, I think. And that was an adjustment. He was used to living more interdependently. and so so being at home was an adjustment for him as well. He didn't necessarily want to be around his mother and father all the time, and what could we all do? Basically, go for walks. So I don't know, Rich, if you.
I think the civic was how isolated people became, as well as the opportunity of Zoom. And so people watched movies with Micah. People had dinners at the same time Micah had dinners, not making it easy, but making it bearable. And I think all of us have seen in this period of COVID that in many ways it's uplifted the significance of people with disabilities who need and use different kinds of way of communications. Everything now has, American Sign Language. Everything has different, captions. And so Zoom has learned as well as we have all learned in this period. And it connected people in ways that people would not have been connected. And so it's all about those relationships. It's all about community. And the hardest thing for parents or professionals is to overcome their individualism, to think that they can pick themselves up from their bootstraps, rather than reach out, as Janice says, asking for help and create interdependence.
Truer words
Right.
have never been said.
Right. And it's not like once you learn it, you could always do it, because, there's that thought, oh, I should be able to do this myself. But, it's ridiculous how long it takes us to reach out and say, hey, I'm stuck here, or I need, whatever it might be. I need someone to, do yoga with Micah on Zoom or whatever. So anyways, that's our mantra over and over. The phrase that I use is learning how to ask, not with apology, but with dignity and intention.
Asking for help.
Yeah. And learning to ask for help without apology, but with dignity and intention.
I love that quote.
And we see Micah do that. And Emma, as a principal, we respect the way she's able to reach out to the community of educators and parents and say, hey, I'm doing this in the school. Help me think this thing through. And Micah's also brilliant at being able to do that. So, that's really the skill and the attitude that we want. I don't have the quote in front of me, but the opening part of the quote is, to hell with bootstraps. We all need it.
That's great. Do you remember who did that quote by any chance?
Oh, I'd have to. I know I have it upstairs. So when we're done, I'll send it to you, the whole quote and the author.
Okay. Well, I know that as I'm watching Micah on social media, and your family's very close, so you get together fairly often. And when you do, he's always so excited. But at the same time, he's always excited to get back to his place. And as a fellow parent, I look at that and I smile, because that's my goal for my daughter. And I think that's the goal for many other parents, that she can feel close and know she has a close family, but that she wants to get back to her own place. And be that independent. He's very independent. And and that's why one of the many reasons you all are such gurus when it comes to this. At least for us.
We could tell you all the times we've failed or faltered or doubled. There's a lot of those. And so we don't want to, give an impression that we know what we're doing. There are certain key principles that guide us. But there's a lot of, tears, fears, and some cheers as well. And I do want to emphasize that the other principle that we learned, and again from other people, really leaders in the field, was that what we're striving for all of us is interdependency. And this concept of independency, it doesn't exist. And so I think we set up people, especially people with disabilities, to think that you've got to do it alone, you do it yourself. And really the key aspect is when an individual can decide what it is they want, their dream, and then how do I, what resources or people do I help to activate that? So we don't lose the sense of independence, but we do it in the framework of interdependence.
That's very important.
And I think it's critical from our perspective is to also to put into the conversation, because of our commitments and upbringing from the 60s, we've had the privilege of seeing the raising of our children as a social question, not just how do they go to school, get a job, and get ahead, but how do they have meaningful lives to reach their potential. So we've had that privilege. We've also had the privilege of having jobs and having the freedom. We're both retired now and we can travel. That's not the privilege that's not the conditions that most people have. So the importance of how they get support, because every parent wants what I think this kind of how do you create the support and the opportunities for your kids to reach their potential. But it's a long journey and it takes a community to do that. And we have become more and more individualistic in our society. And define success as how do I make it rather than how do we create this sense of community. So I think it's critical that there's privilege involved that has given us opportunities and resources. And that makes it easier. At the same time, we have to be saying, how do these conversations reach communities of people that have not had this privilege to also, they also recognize this. This is not new to them. They've relied on community to survive in many ways. So I think there's a lot involved in this conversation.
I love that. Yeah, it sounds like something we could talk about all day, which unfortunately we can't today, but we could. And maybe there will be other conversations. So thank you for that. Now, we all know a lot of Micah's journey in his later young adult years because of Intelligent Lives. But I want to ask you about maybe some little things you did when he was in middle and high school that helped prepare him for interdependence. I'm going to start using that term instead of independence, but both his interdependence and his independence, because I think he has both. And the small example I'm going to give is, are you all familiar with I'm Determined, which is a program at George Mason University that they've been doing for many years, and it's spread to all 50 states, I think. It's a program where families go every summer for a short period of time, and the young students are separated and stay together, and then the parents are separated and stay together. And they're basically learning how to be good self-advocates, and they're learning how to be more independent. And I remember at one of those when my daughter was in middle school, them saying, you need to start making some goals. Instead of just talking, you need to make goals and achieve them. And one of the short goals I made was her waking herself up in middle school. It's something we don't think about. But, it's something that many college students who don't have disabilities don't do. It's a skill. So that's just my tiny example. What examples do you maybe have that you can think of?
Well, one thing we learned is the importance of giving Micah choices. So if we asked a question of him, what do you want to do? Lots of times he wasn't able to either call up the words, or didn't always know. And so, as basic as, asking when we could, what do you want for dinner? Macaroni and cheese, or, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, or whatever it was. So that concept of his being able to articulate what he wanted, that we respected that. When we would go to the doctor's office, and this was when he was, 8, 9 years old, I would, and you know how you sign in your name, and I would say, Micah, you can go up there and sign your name right on that line. And he would sign his name, which basically was at that point an X. And I had to overcome my, insecurities, right? Here's your kid signing an X, and everybody else is, can spell out their name. But I believed, or at least I had to hope that little step of, identifying who you are, taking on that task, was, going into his bones. And the last example, and then we turn to Rich, is that it comes to mind is that when he was in 5th grade, he started coming to his IEP meetings, the planning meetings. And he wouldn't stay for the entire time because, as he'd say, they were very boring. But he had an opportunity to share 2 things that he liked doing that year in school and what he wanted to do. And he welcomed everybody and stayed for maybe 15 minutes and then moved on. Eventually, he stayed for all the entire meeting as he grew up. And then in 6th grade, he always had a couple of friends with him that helped him plan for the meeting. They helped him do what we called PowerPoints. Whoever heard of those? Right now, we live by them, but he was doing the PowerPoints, identifying his needs as wants. So those are a couple of examples that come to my mind.
Just to add 2 more, at a very early age, Janice took Micah and his friends from the circle of friends to go speak at Wayne State University to the only inclusion education class that was going on. And Micah would, introduce himself or say a few words, but it was saying, you have something to say. And it meant a lot to those other young kids who were now speaking at, were speaking at college classes at the age of, Munchkin age. And the other one is, I forget what the other one is.
I'll tell you one that I remember, because it's really important to know that we didn't agree on a lot of things. And even to this day, we often might go into a meeting or an experience, and he hears one thing and I hear the other thing. And of course, my way is the right way. No, I'm just kidding. But it just, I mean, our relationship is critical to, supporting Micah as well. I mean, the kids need to know that we don't always agree, and our good days we can compromise, and on our other days it's not always easy. But anyways, back to the story. I remember, it's hard for me to imagine this, but when Micah was in middle school, so maybe 5th or 6th grade, and we live about 6 blocks from the house, and from the school, and I'd always walk Micah to school. And Rich believed that Micah could walk to the school by himself at this point. And I just couldn't imagine that he could do that. I mean, but Richie really pushed it, and I succumbed. And of course, Micah did great,
And he also went away to camp. There's these Y camps, there's these Jewish summer camps, and he went away for, a week here and then a couple of weeks, so it's about, as Janice says, letting go and different stages. And security is not holding on tight. It's letting go with lots of love.
Well,
letting them make mistakes as well.
Yes.
Letting them make mistakes.
Yeah. The dignity of risk. The dignity of risk.
And it's easier for boys than it is for girls, for parents of boys than it is for parents of girls. And easier for parents of white boys and girls than it is for parents of color and Black folks.
Yeah. So those are some examples. I know Circle of Friends, which we've already mentioned, Great Expectations, our belief basis, and we try to always, what we learned over time is not to bombard them with all the 15 things we wanted them to do in the class. Pick 2 or 3 and really focus on that, because if you come in with too many demands, people turn off. Teachers are, especially we know this more from Emma, they're overwhelmed, and than just Micah in the classroom. So we have a lot of these ideas in our books as well, and we've learned them from other parents. Again, asking for help. I remember feeling a bit depressed. This is sort of a different situation, but I remember feeling some depression around and fear when Michael was in 11th grade, because as I thought about what are we going to do past high school? This was before kids went to college. It was terrifying, and it sort of re-emerged reemerged, the worry and maybe some of the sadness, right? And so I reached out to a couple of mothers who are about 5 or 6 kids who are 5 or 6 older years older than Micah, and said, "What's going on?" And I just felt this camaraderie. They said, "Oh yeah, we went through that as well." So so I keep going back to the story of connecting with other people.
Lastly, the story that Janice shares in the book in the PowerPoint and when she speaks is a story of Micah going to preschool, and one of the themes of every January was the Rosa Parks story, and they would play the Rosa Parks story. And what that meant was Micah was given this sense of, at a very early age, that disability was not only a difference, but a social question for social movements and change. And that's, I think, a critical part of the gift that Micah has been able to participate in. And if we get a chance, we'll talk about, and Michael will talk about what we're trying to do with this house in Syracuse at this point as well.
Thank you for listening to episode 9 of Born Fabulous Podcast 3rd season. I hope you enjoyed it and want to hear more. Some short video clips from most episodes are available on our YouTube channel and on bornfabulouspodcast.com. In episode 10, Janice and Rich will discuss guiding principles, Micah's living situation, circles of support, breaking the silence, and much more. You will enjoy several golden nuggets of wisdom they share that are memorable quotes. Please follow and like us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd be honored if you would leave a review wherever you heard this podcast. Now, please enjoy this clip of Love is a Potion. The lyrics are by Melissa Riggio, who had Down syndrome. The music and voice are by Rachel Fuller.